Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Leila didn't know exactly when the ball started. Maybe her first partner was the cab ride. She didn't mind that she shared the cab with the Sheridan girls and their brother. She sat in her own small corner, feeling the soft seat, imagining it was a young man's suit. The cab moved quickly, passing streetlights, houses, fences, and trees that seemed to dance by. "Have you never been to a ball, Leila?" "How strange," the Sheridan girl said. "Our closest neighbor lived 15 miles away," Leila said softly, opening and closing her fan. Leila tried not to show how excited she was. She didn't want to smile too much or care too much, but everything was new and fun for her. She noticed Meg's flowers, Jose's long necklace, and Laura's dark hair that looked like a flower in the snow. Leila wanted to remember everything forever. She even felt sad when her cousin Lori threw away the small pieces of paper from his new gloves. She wanted to keep those papers as a memory. Lori put his hand on Laura's knee and said, "The 3rd and the 9th, like always. Do you remember?" Leila thought it was wonderful to have a brother. She felt so excited that she almost wanted to cry because she didn't have any brothers or sisters. No brother had ever said something like that to her, and no sister had ever told her, like Meg told Jose, "Your hair has never looked better." But there was no time for Leila to think more. They were at the drill hall, and there were cabs everywhere. The lights were bright, and couples on the street seemed to float like they were flying. Small shoes ran after each other like birds. "Hold my hand, Leila, or you'll get lost," said Laura. "Come on, girls, let's hurry," said Lori. Leila held on to Laura's pink velvet coat, and they rushed past the big golden light, through a passage, and into a room with a sign that said, "Ladies." The room was crowded, and the noise was very loud. 2 long benches were full of coats and wraps. 2 women in white aprons were running up and down, carrying more clothes. Everyone was trying to reach the mirror at the back of the room. A bright gas light lit up the room, and it was shaking like it was ready to dance. When the door opened, Leila heard music from the drill hall, and the light seemed to jump to the ceiling. Girls with dark and fair hair were fixing their hair, tying ribbons, and smoothing their white gloves. They were laughing, and Leila thought they were all beautiful. "Are there no invisible hairpins?" one girl shouted. "I can't find any invisible hairpins at all." "Powder my back, please," someone called. "I need a needle and thread." "I've torn the frill on my dress," another girl cried. "Pass them along, pass them along." Girls passed a basket of little pink and silver dance programs. These had pink pencils and fluffy tassels. Leila's hands were shaking when she took one from the basket. She wanted to ask someone, "Am I supposed to take one too?" But she didn't have time. She quickly read, "Waltz 3. 2. 2 in a canoe. Polka 4. Making the feathers fly." Then Meg said, "Ready, Leila?" and they pushed through the crowded hallway toward the big doors of the drill hall. Dancing hadn't started yet, but the band had stopped tuning their instruments. The noise was so loud that Leila thought when the music started, nobody would hear it. Standing close to Meg and looking over her shoulder, Leila felt even the colorful flags hanging from the ceiling were talking. She wasn't shy anymore. She forgot how, while dressing, she had sat down on the bed with one shoe off and begged her mother to call her cousins and say she couldn't come. She also forgot the feeling she had earlier when she wished to be at home, sitting on the veranda, listening to the baby owls cry under the moonlight. Now she was full of joy so sweet that she didn't want to be alone. She held on to her fan and stared at the shiny golden floor, the flowers, the lanterns, and the stage with its red carpet and gold chairs. She thought, "This is wonderful. It's just wonderful." All the girls stood together on one side of the hall, and the men stood on the other side. The women chaperones, wearing dark dresses, walked slowly across the shiny floor towards the stage. "This is my little cousin from the country, Leila. Be kind to her and find her dance partners." "She's with me," Meg said to other girls. Strange girls smiled at Leila and said, "Of course, dear," but Leila felt they weren't really looking at her. They were watching the men. Why didn't the men start dancing? What were they waiting for? The men stood, fixing their gloves, patting their hair, and smiling at each other. Then, suddenly, as if they had just decided, the men walked quickly across the floor. The girls got excited. A tall man with light hair came up to Meg, took her program, and wrote something down. Then he smiled and turned to Leila. "May I have the pleasure?" he asked, bowing and smiling. After him, a man with dark hair and glasses came up, then Cousin Laurie with his friend, and Laura with a small boy who had freckles and a crooked tie. Then an older man, who was fat and had a bald head, took Leila's program and said, "Let me see, let me see." He compared his dance program, which was full of names, with hers. He took a long time, and Leila felt embarrassed. "Please don't worry about it," she said kindly. But the man wrote something on her program and looked at her again. "Do I remember this bright little face?" he asked softly. "Have I seen you before?" Just then, the band started playing, and the fat man disappeared into the crowd. He was swept away by the beautiful music, which sent everyone spinning and dancing across the golden floor. Leila had learned to dance at boarding school. Every Saturday afternoon, the girls went to a small mission hall where Miss Eccles from London taught dance lessons. The difference between that small, dusty-smelling hall and this beautiful ballroom was so big that Leila was sure if her dance partner didn't come soon, and she had to just stand there, listening to the wonderful music and watching the others dance, she might die or faint. Or maybe even fly out of one of the windows that showed the stars in the night sky. "This is our dance, I think," said someone, bowing and smiling. He offered Leila his arm. She didn't have to stand alone after all. Someone's hand held her waist, and she floated away like a flower thrown into water. "The floor is quite good, isn't it?" said a soft voice close to her ear. "I think it's very slippery," Leila replied. "Pardon?" The voice sounded surprised. Leila repeated what she said. There was a small pause before the voice agreed. "Oh, quite." Then they started dancing again. He danced so smoothly. That was the big difference, Leila thought, between dancing with girls and dancing with men. Girls bumped into each other and stepped on each other's feet. The girl who played the gentleman always held you so tightly. The azaleas no longer looked like separate flowers. They were like pink and white flags flying past her. "Were you at the Bells' party last week?" the voice asked again, sounding tired. Leila wondered if she should ask him if he wanted to stop dancing. "No, this is my first dance," she answered. Her partner gave a little laugh. "Oh, really?" he said, sounding surprised. "Yes, it's really my first dance," Leila said excitedly. It felt good to finally tell someone. "You see, I've lived in the countryside my whole life." At that moment, the music stopped, and they sat on 2 chairs against the wall. Leila tucked her pink satin shoes under her chair and fanned herself, happily watching the other couples walk past and disappear through the swinging doors. "Are you enjoying yourself, Leila?" asked Jose, nodding her golden head. Laura passed by and gave Leila a tiny wink. This made Leila wonder for a moment if she was truly grown up. Her partner didn't say much. He coughed, put away his handkerchief, pulled down his waistcoat, and picked a little thread off his sleeve. But it didn't matter. Almost immediately, the band started again, and her second partner seemed to appear from the ceiling. "The floor isn't bad," said the new voice. "Did everyone always start by talking about the floor?" Then he asked, "Were you at the Neves' party on Tuesday?" Again, Leila explained that it was her first dance. She thought it was a little strange that her partners didn't seem more excited. It was such a thrilling moment for her, her first ball. Everything was just beginning for her. Before this, she had never really known what the night was like. It used to be dark, quiet, and beautiful, yes, but also a little sad. Serious. Now, it would never feel like that again. The night had become bright and exciting. "Would you like an ice cream?" her partner asked. They went through the swinging doors and down the hall to the supper room. Leila's cheeks were hot, and she was very thirsty. The ice creams looked so sweet on little glass plates, and the frosted spoon was cold, too. When they went back to the ballroom, the fat man was waiting for her by the door. Seeing how old he was gave Leila a little shock again. He should have been sitting with the older people. And when she compared him to her other dance partners, he looked shabby. His waistcoat was wrinkled, one button was missing from his glove, and his coat looked like it was dusty with powder. "Come along, little lady," said the fat man. He barely held her, and they moved so slowly that it felt more like walking than dancing. But he didn't say anything about the floor. "This is your first dance, isn't it?" he asked softly. How did you know? Leila asked. Said the fat man. That's what happens when you get old. He breathed heavily as he guided her past a clumsy couple. I've been doing this for the last 30 years. 30 years. Leila cried. That was 12 years before she was even born. It's hard to think about, isn't it? Said the fat man sadly. Leila looked at his bald head, and she felt sorry for him. I think it's amazing that you're still dancing, she said kindly. You're very sweet, said the fat man. He held her a little closer and hummed along with the music. But you won't be dancing for as long as I have. No, said the fat man. Before then, you'll be sitting up on the stage, watching in your nice black dress. These pretty arms will be short and fat, and you'll have a different kind of fan, a black one made of bones. The fat man shivered. You'll smile like the older ladies up there and point to your daughter. You'll tell the lady next to you about some awful man who tried to kiss her at the club ball. And your heart will ache. The fat man squeezed her tighter because nobody wants to kiss you anymore. And you'll say how hard it is to walk on these slippery floors, how dangerous they are. Right, Miss Twinkle Toes, the fat man said softly. Leila gave a small laugh, but she didn't feel like laughing. Could it all be true? It sounded so true. Was this first ball just the start of her last ball? Suddenly, the music felt sad. Oh, how quickly things changed. Why didn't happiness last forever? Forever wasn't too long. I want to stop, Leila said quickly. The fat man led her to the door. No, she said, I won't go outside. I won't sit down. I'll just stand here, thank you. She leaned against the wall, tapping her foot, pulling her gloves, and trying to smile. But deep inside, a little girl covered her face with her apron and cried. Why did he ruin everything? I say, said the fat man, you mustn't take me seriously, little lady. As if I would, said Leila, shaking her small dark head and biting her lip. The couples kept walking by. The swing doors opened and closed. Now, the bandleader started new music. But Leila didn't want to dance anymore. She wanted to be home or sitting on the veranda, listening to the baby owls. When she looked at the stars through the dark windows, they had long beams like wings. But soon, a soft, sweet, beautiful tune began, and a young man with curly hair bowed to her. She had to dance to be polite until she could find Meg. Very stiffly, she walked to the middle and proudly placed her hand on his arm. But in just 1 minute, with one turn, her feet glided again. The lights, flowers, dresses, pink faces, and velvet chairs all became one beautiful spinning wheel. And when her next partner bumped into the fat man, and he said, "Pardon," she smiled at him more brightly than ever. She didn't even recognize him anymore.